After studying this module, you shall be able to understand the concept of memory. You shall be able to explain three-store model of memory, describe sensory memory with its two kinds, iconic and econic, discuss short-term memory as a working memory, describe neurocognition and short-term memory. Memory holds a very important position in the work of cognitive psychology. It is this topic which has been thoroughly investigated and worked upon by many investigators. William James and Ebbinghaus. Interest in memory captivated the attention of experimental psychologists who further elaborated the theories of mental representations of how the information can be stored. This is very much evident in humans, as the lives of individuals have meaning only because of memory. Imagine if we were not being able to recollect important events of our past, which we are, which we were, how we were born, where we were born, what we had done in school, and even what you thought or did just moments ago. Therefore, the loss of memory, by contrast, would steal one's very life and personhood. This chapter focuses on the three-store model of memory, which asserts that memory must be divided into sensory, short-term and long-term memory. We will focus on first two forms of memory, which are sensory and short-term memory. Long-term memory is discussed later in the module. Let us first talk about sensory memory. It is the first stage of memory, the point at which information enters the nervous system, that is the eyes, ears and so on. Information is encoded into sensory memory as neural messages in the nervous system. As long as those neural messages are traveling through the system, it can be said that people have a memory for which information that can be assessed if needed. Thus, sensory memory is closely connected to what we call as perception. Bradley has described it as a record of our own percepts, as it is related to a brief storage of sensory information. Sensory memory refers to the brief persistence of stimuli following transduction. For example, you are in a party and talking to someone, but suddenly you look back to check on what that person who just passed by you was wearing. The question is that how did you know that you need to look back? Your eyes had already moved past weird looking guy in almost shorts in a party. This happened because some part of your brain must have processed what you saw. This is called double task and can only be explained in the presence, however brief, of a memory of what you saw. The major function of it is to perceive recognition and further enter into short-term memory. Sensory memory plays a very important role in our memory. Without sensory memory, events in the environment would be forgotten as soon as they registered in the nervous system. There are two kinds of sensory memory that have been studied extensively. The first one is iconic memory, which is associated with sight, and the second is echoic, which is related to hearing. Talking about the iconic memory, it is a visual memory lasting only a fraction of a second. In vision, the brief persistence of sensory memory is called iconic memory. The classic work on iconic memory was first investigated by Sperling. Let us take another example to understand the concept more clearly. Suppose you need to remember a new telephone number of your friend. For doing this, our brain can use a variety of strategies. The brain may visualize the number which are supposed to be remembered. This process of visualizing in an imagery form is called iconic memory. Capacity of iconic memory. Sperling's work indicated that it has a large capacity, greater than what we can be reported at once. In his study, he presented an array of 9 letters for only 50 milliseconds to his observers by using a device called tachistoscope. The observers were immediately asked to recall as many letters as possible. His participants could report 4 or 5 letters. Sperling called this the whole report condition. But once the letters were located in space, their shape was specified and their name was recognized, some letters were lost. He assumed that this happened because visual information had faded before most of it could be reported, as all the letters persisted briefly in iconic storage. It was seen that the letters may have been briefly available in iconic memory, but verbally reporting the letters required their conscious recognition and representation in short term memory. However, they claimed to have seen more letters. Sperling's findings supported his assumption and indicated that information in iconic storage delays within about 0.5 seconds. To further investigate the accuracy of this method, he further developed partial report method. In this method, the observer had to report only the letters from a single row but did not know in advance which row. But immediately after the presentation, a high pitched tone occurred to indicate top row letters are needed to be reported. Similarly, medium pitched tone cued middle row letters and low pitched tone cued the bottom row. Using this method, Sperling found that subjects could accurately report any of the 3 rows. This means that the entire 3 rows was in iconic memory and available to the participants. Therefore, the capacity of iconic memory is everything that can be seen at one time. When talking about the function of iconic memory, it plays a very important function in our visual system. Iconic memory helps the visual system to view the surroundings as continuous and stable in spite of the saccadic movements, which help vision from adapting to a constant visual stimuli. It also allows enough time for the brain stem to decide if the information is important enough to be brought into consciousness. Let us now move on to echoic memory. Echoic memory is referred as a brief memory of something a person has heard. It is an auditory system that can store sensations that are relatively unprocessed inputs. For example, suppose someone is reading an interesting book and is asked a question. The first reaction of the person would be, "What have you said?" This phenomena states a very good example of echoic memory. Here the person has not really processed the statement from the other person, which eventually leads to this phenomena of "what?" The person has heard it, but the problem arises in interpretation of the statement. Later on, the person realizes what has been said to her. This playback facility depends on the echoic memory. The playback facility, as discussed above, may be used by repeating the numbers or letters loudly which we intend to remember. This will help in focusing our attention to specific tasks which are intended to remember for later on. Echoic memory's capacity is limited to what can be heard at one moment and is smaller than the capacity of iconic memory, although it lasts longer, about 2 to 4 seconds. Echoic memory is very useful when a person wants to have meaningful conversations with others. It allows the person to interpret and remember what someone has said so that they can respond further to the phrase said by the other person. If it is to be compared with iconic memory, there are the incoming auditory information stays for that long where the brain can decide if the incoming information is useful or not to become conscious. Now let us understand short-term memory. Short-term memory, also known as the primary or active memory, is the information we are currently aware of or thinking about. Information which has been received from the sensory memory enters the next stage of memory called the short-term memory. The process takes place through selective attention. It is the ability to focus on only one stimulus from among all sensory inputs. For example, suppose you need to dial a number from a directory. You silently rehearse that number till you reach your telephone. If a delay happens in dialing that number, it will be easily lost from our memory, which seems to be available temporarily in a short-term store. Short-term memory is about the same as what you notice at any given moment, which is the content of your conscious experience. It is the smallest part of memory because it cannot hold much information at any one time. Its size can be estimated by measuring memory span or span of attention or span of apprehension. This is the number of separate items or chunks that you can repeat back immediately without error. Most people can repeat 6 or 7 digits or letters perfectly almost every time, but few can consistently repeat more than 7. Short-term memory is also referred as working memory. This term emphasizes the fact that the short-term memory is not merely a box into which information is placed, but is a working, active system that processes the information at any given moment. Therefore, it helps in maintaining the mental representations that are relevant to the performance of the cognitive task in an activated state. It has been proposed that short-term memory consists of three interrelated systems within it. The central executive is also known as the big boss that controls and coordinates the other two systems. The other two systems are the visual sketchpad and auditory system as a recorder. The central executive function is to act as an interpreter of both the visual and auditory information in short-term memory. For example, when a person is reading a book, the sketchpad will contain images of people and events of the particular passage being read, while the recorder plays the dialogue in the person's head. The central executive helps interpret the information from both the systems and pulls it all together. The figure shows the hierarchy of a memory system or the components of the memory. According to the model given, working memory has several components. One component, phonological loop, briefly stores mental representations of sound. The phonological loop is active when you listen to a spoken word or when you sound out a word to yourself as you read a text or speak a language. A second component, the visual sketchpad, briefly stores the visual and spatial information as it occurs when you form a mental image of someone's face or a spatial layout of your room in your house. Both the two components can work simultaneously. For example, you can silently repeat the word sunrise while at the same time holding mental image of a sunrise or that of birds chirping. A third component, called the episodic buffer, provides a temporary storage space where information from long-term memory and from phonological loop and visual sketchpad can be integrated, manipulated, and made available for conscious processing. For example, your teacher asks you, how much is 23 plus 86? You may maintain the autistic codes as you hear the question by using the first component of memory, phonological loop. Your visual sketchpad will help you maintain a mental image of the numbers. But if you want to successfully complete the task, the rules for performing addition must be retrieved from your long-term memory. This creates the ingredients for the conscious perception that you may experience as you perform the mental addition. For example, 3 plus 6 is 9 and so on. The term working memory stresses that the system is needed to accomplish cognitive work. The span of working memory is measured in a dual task situation that demands attention to be paid to more than remembering a list of words. For example, in a reading span test, participants were asked to read and understand a series of sentences in addition to remembering the last word of each sentence. In the operation span test, participants must perform a series of mathematical problems in addition to remembering of words paired with each problem. These tests of working memory require actively processing task relevant information. At the same time, material is held in the short term storage. Both the test requires coordination of two tasks, that is, they require central executive attention. Individuals with a larger capacity of executive attention attain higher span score, as do those with greater short-term storage capacity. When talking about the capacity of short-term memory, the amount of information stored in short-term memory is small compared to the vast amount stored in a long-term memory. The capacity of short-term memory is often called memory span. In a memory span test, the experimenter presents lists of items, example digits or words, of increasing length. An individual's span is determined as the longest list length that he or she can recall correctly in the given order or at least half of the trials. Psychologist George Miller suggested that human short-term memory has a forward memory span of approximately 7 items plus or minus 2, and that was well known at that time. More recent research has shown that this magical 7 number is roughly accurate for college students recalling lists of digits. But memory span varies widely with populations tested and with material used. For example, the ability to recall words in order depends on a number of characteristics of these words. Fewer words can be recalled when the words have longer spoken duration, that is known as the word length effect, or when their speech sounds are similar to each other. This is called the phonological similarity effect. More words can be recalled when the words are highly familiar or occur frequently in the language. Recall performance is also better when all the words in a list are taken from a single semantic category such as games than when the words are taken from the similar categories. According to the available evidence, the overall estimate of short-term memory is about 4 pieces or chunks of information. Digit span test. Subjects in the experiment were asked to recall the digits in serial order. Each series gets longer and longer until the subjects cannot recall any of the numbers in order. Chunking. Chunking is the process by which one can expand his or her ability to remember things in the short term. Chunking is also a process by which a person organizes material into meaningful groups. If the bits of information are combined into meaningful units or chunks, more information can be held in short-term memory. Although the average person may retain only about 4 different units in short-term memory, chunking can greatly increase a person's recall capacity. For example, In recalling a phone number, the person should chunk the digits into three groups. First, the area code, such as 123, then a 3-digit chunk 456, and last a 4-digit chunk, which can be 7890. This method of remembering phone numbers is far more effective than attempting to remember a string of 10 digits. This process of recording or reorganizing the information is called chunking. Practice and the usage of existing information in long-term memory can lead to additional improvements in one's ability to use chunks. Loss of short-term memory contents. Rehearsal is the process where information is kept in short-term memory by mentally repeating it. When the information is repeated each time, that information is re-entered into the short-term memory, thus keeping the information for another 15 to 20 seconds, the average store time for short-term memory. It is practice of saying some information to be remembered over and over in one's head in order to maintain it in short-term memory. It is a process of paying attention to the information which is to be held in our memory system. Since attention is the key for storing all the information in short-term memory, with rehearsal, information will be stored in short-term memory and the role of rehearsal will stop. Decay of information will happen when rehearsal stops. The memory rapidly decays and forgetting takes place. Decay is a type of forgetting that occurs when memories fade over time. This does not apply to long-term memory, but rather storage and short-term memory. The main reason for this occurs in sensory and short-term memory is that we don't need to process and store all information that we encounter in the world, so we simply don't attend to recognize or rehearse all the information, and this information just fades away, not to be stored in our long-term memories. Interference of similar information also takes place. If any information interferes during the rehearsal, memories can also be likely to be lost. For example, if someone is trying to count a stack of money by reciting each number out loud while counting, and someone else asks that person the time and interferes with the counting process, the person who is counting will probably forget what the last number was and have to start all over again. Short-term memory helps people keep track of things like counting. Intrusion of new information into short-term memory. Interference in short-term memory can also happen if the amount of information to be held in short-term memory exceeds its capacity. Information which is already stored in short-term memory would be pushed out so that new information can be placed in the memory system. Neurocognition and short-term memory. Neurophysiologic findings suggest that a separate memory store could be located structurally with the human brain. The most famous case was presented by Brenda Miller, focused on physical trauma and brain lesion. The patient complained of severe epilepsy and surgical excision was done of the medial temporal region to relieve him of symptoms. The procedure removed parts of the temporal lobe, including the hippocampus. It was observed that his epilepsy was improved but became profoundly amnesic and could not store new information in long-term memory. He could recall a series of numbers momentarily presented as short-term memory was unimpaired, but could not retain similar information over long periods of time because the lesion took place in the temporal lobe and hippocampus. It is apparent that these sites contain important memory structures. He made a startling discovery that temporal lobe lesions can learn implicit types of tasks that involve perceptual and motor skills. Furthermore, these patients can retain the memory of these tasks for long periods of time. The most extreme example of short term memory is a chess master who can explore several possible solutions mentally before choosing the one that will lead to checkmate. This ability to hold on to a piece of information temporarily in order to complete a task is specifically human. It causes certain regions of the brain to become very active, in particular the frontal lobe. This region at the very front of the brain is highly developed in humans. It is the reason that we have such high, upright foreheads compared with the receding foreheads of our cousins the apes. Hence, it is no surprise that the part of the brain that seems most active during one of the most important human activities is located precisely in this prefrontal region that is well developed only in human beings. Findings from other brain damaged people have implicated areas in the frontal lobe as having much to do with the working memory. Thus, damage to the frontal lobe was associated with disrupt attention, planning, and problem solving, as they are the important components of central executive in the working memory. Baddeley's model also postulated the existence of a phonological, acoustic and linguistic memory and a visual or spatial memory containing mental images. Brain imaging studies have also revealed distinct neuroanatomical bases for both of these forms of memory. The phonological loop activates certain areas in the left hemisphere that are associated with the production of language, such as Wernicke's area and Broca's area. Visual or spatial memory seems to be associated with the region of the occipital cortex generally associated with visual processing. Let us summarize. Memory has been regarded by many cognitive psychologists as the most basic cognitive process. Thus, it helps us in thinking, remembering our personal events. The three-store model has fueled major advantages in our understanding of human memory. Despite different challenges which are being faced by this model, its core assertion, sensory and short-term memory, can be distinguished in terms of their capacity, storage and duration till it lasts and accounts for an impressive evidence in research area. Sensory memory was further divided into iconic and echoic memory. The process of visualizing in an imagery form is called iconic memory. Auditory memory is called echoic memory. Its duration is brief, but oral memory stimuli such as speech are also stored for longer periods of time in short-term memory. Short-term memory or working memory holds information we are actively thinking about. Limited in capacity and duration. The capacity of short-term memory is limited to about 4 chunks of information and its duration is less than 30 seconds. Working memory refers to the system for temporarily maintaining mental representations that are relevant to the performance of a cognitive task in an activated state. Baddeley's model postulates stores for verbal information called the phonological loop, non-verbal information called the visual spatial sketchpad, and integrated event representations called the episodic buffer. The central executive controls processing in these short-term stores. Neurocognitive studies identified the role of hippocampus as part of the brain that is responsible for the formation of new long-term memories. Research involving PET scanning techniques strongly suggest that short-term memory are stored in the prefrontal cortex, which is very front of the brain, and the temporal lobe.